irresponsible, a nightmare, terrible, convoluted, ridiculous. That's just a few words used by the public to describe the new Forest-Hill interchange being built west of St. Louis. Ground will break on this project later this year, and we have the Missouri Department of Transport, or MoDOT, to thank for this unique design. Part of the Improve I-70 initiative, this interchange will replace the existing Diamond interchange with a modified DDI. We've used some of MoDOT's existing designs before in the city, with the Deadly interchange back in episode 20 and the Unique interchange in episode 18. Really interesting designs, and if you enjoy this video, you're going to enjoy them too, so do check them out after you've watched this. So let's get this thing built, and then we can check it out to see how it actually works in the game, and we'll make our own mind up whether or not it deserves all the hate. As we look over the city, you're going to get a good view of progress as we get into what is now episode 45 here in Cape Lomond. I'm going to switch focus from the high density area to the south, over to the lower density to the north, and more specifically, I'm going to be heading back to the starting area over at Lake Lorno. So we have this interchange here, which was really just supposed to be temporary, and I think it's been there for about 20 episodes, so it is definitely time for this monstrosity to go. Simple diamond, not unlike the real life one in fact, so it will be a like for like change. Now you will notice, and you've maybe seen there in the screenshots and the thumbnail, that we are going to be modifying this design to fit into this particular part of the city, and I really wanted a 5-way design, and it didn't really justify having a big massive, full system interchange here. We are kind of hooking up arterials to the highway, so yeah, we're going to be using a wee bit of imagination, and we'll draw on our experience here in building these road networks, and we should come up with something fairly unique and pretty interesting. So obviously, as you can see, I'm just ripping out the existing highway. I do want this one to go underneath. I want to have it a distinct bridge element to it, and I want to keep the main highway stuck to the ground. You can see there we've got that awkward positioning on that arterial that's running north to south, that little nubbin. That's the bit that we're really going to be modifying here in this interchange design. We will be pretty much building like for like what they have planned in the real life one, but this is how we're going to be making it our own. So I've removed that little bit of the highway that was poking out, it's kind of getting in the way for now, and the first thing I wanted to do was really just get the bridges in place. Get the bridge in place first, get an idea of the scale of the thing, and then we can kind of build around it. Curves, super simple. We've just used the parallel tool, and then we hook them up using the curve tool. Now here I'm just going to bring the land up, and this is the easiest way of doing it. So you can just pick the height with the elevated section, and then use the road tool to actually automatically bring the ground up. You just use the right click where you have the elevated on the advanced road tools, and then now that the ground is attached to the road, you can just flatten it out. Really simple. As I was talking there, you might have missed me pull out the road and kind of measure off and mark on the lower highway, and the reason we're doing that is really where we're just going to be connecting our ramps later on. From experience, I know that ramps tend to work out about 250 meters, give or take. They usually look pretty natural, and from a drop in elevation or a rise in elevation point of view, it usually works out pretty well. If you're going to be building this yourself, the additional runabouts either side can be a little bit tricky to get in, so don't be scared to just delete them and redo them if you have to. I'm going to slow the video down a little bit and just talk about the design and exactly how this thing works. As I mentioned right at the start, this is basically a divergent diamond interchange, or a DDI. For right-hand traffic, which is what the city is built on, the roundabouts will work just exactly how you would expect them to work. Traffic will rotate in an anti-clockwise direction. That'll be true for this section on the right-hand side and this section on the left-hand side. At first glance, this interchange can look like something that you might perhaps commonly find in the UK, but it's not the case. The oval element, or the big roundabout in the middle, that's going to run counter to the usual direction of traffic. The traffic will essentially cross to the wrong side of the road when they're on that section, and then they'll be able to rejoin the normal direction on the next roundabout when we get to that. I hope I'm explaining that okay. If I'm not, I'll show you at the end just exactly how it all works again. With the roundabout elements and the raised elements in place, I just want to hook them up now, and I'm not going to do anything fancy really at this point with the ramps. We are going to modify it, as I said earlier on in just a minute, to essentially make it a 5-way. We're going to hook up one of the other arterials. But for now, pretty standard ramp configuration. We're just going to take the ramps out from where we put the markers earlier on. I am going to give the ramps a couple of extra lanes, and that will help distribute traffic into the interchange itself. So we'll send one left and one right here, and just go straight in, and there's no conflict in traffic here, they're straight into the interchange. Repeat the process on the other side, and again you can have a little look at exactly how we're hooking these up, and you can get a closer look in terms of the direction of traffic. The arrows are on there, so it's kind of straightforward. Now we can get creative, and we're going to figure out just exactly how we're going to be hooking up this arterial road. So the plan of action over here is to create something of a partial Y interchange, I guess, is maybe the closest thing to a full interchange I could maybe describe it as. So for any traffic that is going to be turning right here onto that arterial, it's going to have a direct route from the lower arterial onto this one that we're working on right now, and any other movement of traffic, it will basically have to go through the interchange itself. Doing it this way ensures that we have all directions of travel covered, and there shouldn't be that much traffic coming off this road, even if we build it up. So from a traffic point of view, I don't think it's going to really affect things too much, having that extra traffic flow going through the interchange itself. I'm going to use exactly the same principles on the other side. Again, we're going to create an exit that anybody coming from any direction on the interchange can use, and then I'm going to have a separate one running parallel, and that will join onto the second lane here. And again, that will be a direct route from one arterial to the other, and it will save any traffic actually having to go through the interchange itself. So it will require a little bit of jiggery pokery, and we will get the ramps looking kind of nice. And the idea is to try and keep things, although it's a big area that we're working on, but try and keep things as reasonably compact as possible. A little bit of lane maths here in effect. We're going to use the outside lane for this, and we'll just kind of filter it through, and then the other two lanes can run directly into the first roundabout. And talking about those first roundabouts, it's time to get them connected. Now I'm going to use just the normal 2-lane road. This is not the highway, and the idea here is that the traffic on these little connection roads, they should stop as they give way to people that are on the roundabout, because they're the highway roads. That's, in theory anyway, what I'm looking to do. Now of course we'll need to get rid of all the walkways, and we can get rid of all the traffic lights, but I'm going to give a traffic light option right at the very end, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Much like the ramps on the other side, I would like a direct route that I can give here, and again, this will give our traffic options not to go on the interchange, but rather it can just go directly onto the arterial itself, and again, just reducing the workload of those roundabouts. Let's get the last few touches done here. We're going to use a little bit of Move It, and we're going to sort out the fine tuning on some of the ramps, but of course we will need a couple of other lanes here as well to keep things moving. Now with those final touches, that's really just the basics of the road network in place. There's plenty more to do to kind of make it look at least half decent, and I also want to take the opportunity in this episode to really extend some of our low density residential. We've got plenty of options there to add some more, and again, the schools continue to be a problem, so elementary places, we're going to be adding some of them as well. Now in fairness, it's not a bad looking road network in the first place without having to do anything extra, but really what I want to do is I want to make this really pop out and make it a feature of the city as they usually do. So in terms of the terraforming, obvious stuff where we have, janky cliff faces, we want to get rid of them, we'll just smooth them out. Where we've kind of messed up the terrain with the electricity cables or pylons there, we'll just raise them up, we just move it, and we'll get them shifted up a wee bit as well. We definitely don't want traffic lights down here, so we'll get rid of that. And we can get rid of some of the jank on that road by just making it a key wall, and then we'll go ahead and fine tune some of the slopes that we have on this little ramp. Another option that we could have used on that ramp would be potentially just bulldoze it and then just redo it with the slope tool. Now for my money, interchange ramps, these ones coming up to the highway definitely need to be changed. Look a little bit short, a little bit unnatural, and I want to try and bring them up to the road a little bit closer for sure. Key walls, plenty of them, and we're going to use some of them to really just kind of create a sort of man-made drop in elevation. Always looks good, takes a wee bit of time, and I'll show you how to get it done here. So it's just a case of picking a height, and then initially we'll flatten it out. Once it's flattened out, we're going to be using the slope tools, and we're going to get it nice and sharp. I'm also going to key wall just the insides in the big oval roundabout as well. We're going to be using the same technique in there as well. So let's get rid of the stuff that looks completely out of place. On the other side, you'll see that that's still there. You can't really use the normal slope tool, it won't get rid of that cliff face. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it up with little movements, and again, small movement, small brush, and then we can just make it nice and smooth, just like that. So that's going to give us our base, and what you're going to see here is just using the slope tool there again, and what you'll notice is that you're going to have super smooth curves coming up and around each of the key walls. So we'll get rid of that jank. It will not do. If you mess it up, just redo it again. But right click, pick a slope, and then left click. There we go. Perfect. Move on to the next one. Repeat the process. And again, little movements along here. Smooth it all out with a little brush. And you should end up with this. And it does look sharp, doesn't it? So compare that to before the terraforming, and it's a fairly significant difference. Now I want to have plenty of safety barriers. I'm going to give them protection on all of the ramps and all of the main highways, and I just went and key walled the bridges, so let's get them quickly redone. One of them looked okay, but the elevation wasn't enough to save the others, so what we'll do is we'll just draw the little markers and we'll just key wall the individual sections again in just a minute. Okay, there we go, we got that bridge redone, and again we can take a bit of a swing round and see how things look. Of course, it doesn't have to be perfect first time every time. If there's little imperfections or whatever, you can always come back and rejig them. Now, I was missing a little bit of a barrier, so I'm going to use net lane, I'm going to use move it with manipulation mode, and we're just going to sink that into the ground, and that is ideal. And I'm not quite sure how long manipulation mode's been able to change net lanes, but that is super useful. I reckon that's going to be something I'll be using in quite a number of different scenarios as we get through the build. I do want to see how things are moving, so I'm just going to temporarily hook it up to that industrial area down there. Then I'm going to mess about a little bit with the roads. I'm actually going to take away a few choices for our sims, and along this motorway, rather than delete it because it might be a little bit tricky rebuilding it, I'm just going to change the direction in the traffic, and we're going to be cutting this highway off completely. No longer an option, we're going to have to look for alternatives. Along the other arterial, I'm just going to delete a section. There we go. And hopefully we should be able to force plenty more traffic in. And it will really give us a much better idea of how things are moving. So after letting it run a little while, I think there was only one obvious issue, and this was down at this particular roundabout. We had a little bit of a problem with traffic coming in from the main city and then trying to turn north. So around here, I'm going to add an extra lane, and once we had it added in, it actually improved traffic flow quite a bit, and it stopped a lot of the traffic actually stopping on the roundabout. So yeah, if you're ever in any doubt, always sit back, let things run for a while. If there's anything obvious, then you can make adjustments. We have all the main infrastructure in place, all the road stuff is basically done. Now I want to make this thing look good, and I'm going to employ a few different tactics and whatnot to do that. Now what I'll do for this particular chapter is I'll kind of let it run as a time lapse for part of it, and every now and again I'll jump in and sort of explain what I'm doing. Now I always like having these curves on the inside of the highway. I think they just look better, and you can kind of create a little bit of a canopy, or I'm not really quite sure what you would kind of call that, but I guess it's maybe like a webbed effect, I guess, in the inside. Now what I was doing originally was I was going to use the curb net lane. Thought that would create a nice little border there at the edge, but of course it's on a slope, so half of it disappeared when I was using it. Well, so that wasn't going to work. So I went back to the old method, just used the path, and again just traced around it. Once we're done, we just delete the path, and we've got a pretty nice effect. And again, that all looks nice and sharp, and it gives us a nice contrast to the grass in the ground that we're going to have. For this interchange, I was mostly going to go with the decoration that's kind of similar to the real life one. The bus lane surface colour works perfectly for this, and we just need to make sure that it's the one that goes under the road so it doesn't bleed into the tarmac or the concrete. Remember, with these colour palettes, with these colour surfaces, you can use them on top of existing surfaces as well. So if you want a tiled surface, you can do your tile, put this on top of it, and the tile will kind of go through the surface itself. It's got a certain element of transparency. So that's how you'll see some of the slight textured look on the pink bits. It's basically going over the grass, and that's kind of coming through on the colour. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you've made it this far, really appreciated. Special thank you to Patreon and YouTube members here. Again, your support is invaluable. Every single penny I get from Patreon and YouTube right now is going towards the channel. So guys, you're making a huge difference. Thanks again. If you've been thinking about how you can support the channel, then do check out the links on the channel description. Right, back to the building. I'm going to get a little bit more surface work done. We're going to add a little bit of decoration and some lights, and I'll catch up with you in just a minute. I knew that I wanted to add some contrasting colour to the, the bus lane to the pink, and I kind of went for kind of Piccana orange here, and I think it looks pretty good. It actually works quite well. So I'm going to make the most of that. I'm actually going to replace quite a bit of the decoration with that and fill a few of the other gaps, and I think it provides quite a striking contrast. Now, I couldn't initially work out why I couldn't replace one of these surfaces, and I think the reason was there was two surfaces there. So if that doesn't work, just delete one of them or delete both of them, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, in case you're wondering why that wasn't working, double surfaced it at some point. I think just zooming back, I think the orange is a good shout. Definitely looks unique. Might not be realistic. I don't care. I think it looks good. It's definitely staying in. So got a few more details to add, and then I'll catch up with you in a sec again. In the last episode of Cape Lomond, we'd obviously spent quite a bit of time giving our other interchange towards the downtown a bit of love and a bit of attention. And part of that, I was using some of the new surface details by Gaga. And you can see here, I've put the 4 of them out there. These are all the boulder ones or the rocks ones, I'm not quite sure what they're called. But you'll have additional options to try and break up bits of land that perhaps need it. So I'm going to use the same concept as the previous week. I'm going to lay down Sully's as a base. We're going to have additional decals on there from Static Noises pack, and then we're going to use some of Gaga's boulders here as well. And that should give us a little bit of rough terrain and a little bit more interest rather than just having a single surface down here. And once we have all of this stuff in place, we're going to be able to break it up even further with the addition of some vegetation. So let's fire through that now. So as you'll see, I'm just using a combination of oaks at different heights, really sunken down very low to give us that kind of grass look, sunken not quite as much to give us some overgrowth look, yep, and then we're going to add a little splash of colour there by using some of the apple trees as well. And I think that looks pretty reasonable, and I think it means that we're going to have to spend quite a bit of time on the outside of the interchange when we get around to it and give that some context in terms of nature and greenery and whatnot. So let's just get the final few touches done, and then we can move on and we can extend our neighbourhood. Now, it's funny to think that this is where we started the city build a year ago, which is nuts. And we really haven't touched it much since, to be honest. This little town here on the edge of Lake Lorno has been running away quite happily without too many issues. And now it's time to give it a little bit of an expansion, I think. And I reckon that investment in infrastructure has perhaps spurred things along. So really what I'm going to do in terms of road layout is just kind of extend what's there already, nothing too groundbreaking. I think we're just going to have a bit of a curved grid coming round the existing road. I think that makes sense. And where it will allow, we're going to just really add as many of the buildings as we can. We'll be using the southwest pack on this one, and we're going to let it spawn in naturally. Where we need to sort of fill a gap as such, we can just pop a little roundabout, I think, there. And I think that works fine, you know, as a couple of little cul-de-sacs, gives a little bit of interest more than anything else. Now, there is a little bit of scope to add perhaps some service buildings here, and I think, as I mentioned earlier on, we definitely just need to chuck in a school. Every time we do a build, we need some elementary schools added in here, and this is going to be no exception. So I'm just going to zone out here and just be careful that I don't have too much in the way of any type of building underneath our electricity cables, and I don't think that would be appreciated. I'm going to use the advanced road tools, and we'll just make sure that we get everything zoned the way that we want it. And just a case of clicking road really, and it'll knock off the zoning, which is kind of nice and intuitive, straightforward to use. I'll do like that mod. I'm not going to zone residential right on the arterial. I think having a little bit of a gap is required there. But that said, I have left a bit of a strip there, and perhaps we can shoehorn some commercial in there. We can definitely put a decent sized school in there too. As we run through the time lapse, and give me some time to think about what I want to do, and I'm actually going to swerve away from the elementary school. I'm going to pop one of the high schools up here. I think it's a pretty nice fit, and I think it actually makes sense up against the sports field. I'm not going to add too much in terms of the add-ons. I think just as is looking the part. And for the elementary school, I am going to just chuck everything out here. I'm going to get rid of that little cul-de-sac and a little roundabout. I think I would actually rather have the big chunkier asset with the school gymnasium. Quite a big asset that for a primary school, but I reckon it should look the part. So we'll get it shifted into place with a little bit of movement, and I'm going to extend the hedging that comes with it. Just use the net lanes here. Nice and straightforward. Go. And one thing that's missing from this asset really is a bit of parking. You know, where's the teacher's going to park? So let's get that added. And then what we'll do is we'll grab that same net lane and we'll extend it, and we'll essentially create an extended border around the whole development and make it look like one big asset, right? Now there's a couple options for that gap. I could perhaps maybe put a playground or something there. In the end, I thought it was probably better just to shift it over. It kind of fitted really nice. And the nice thing about using the net lanes, of course, is that we can just use move it, grab it at the corner, and it will just shift the pair of them over, which is really, really nice. So again, a little detail we usually do is just add those decals, so it looks like it's a road coming into the car park. And I reckon that's a pretty nice fit there. We still had a little bit of a gap in that particular parcel of land, and I thought perhaps maybe a little bit of commercial alongside the school kind of made sense. So we have an opportunity here to fit a path in, so we will. We're going to kind of use the same technique as the school. Pretty straightforward. We're just going to pull out the borders here, or the surfaces here rather I should say, and then extend the border with the hedge. And again, just gives that impression that it's all one big sort of perfectly fitting asset. Now that didn't make sense. That looks like a bit of a driveway, so let's get that taken out. Add the decals on there and at the front, and I reckon that should look like a pretty natural fit. Perfect. Swinging over to our electricity pylons, I'm really just going to use the same surface tools that you saw me use to create the actual highway itself, or the interchange itself. So pretty self-explanatory. We'll get a wee bit more vegetation in here in the actual neighbourhood itself and make it sort of blend in better. And what you will find is that I'm going to change the trees up a little bit to our usual palette. When I started this build, I was using a pretty varied tool brush in terms of the trees, but now it's pretty much apples and oaks. So I'm going to revert back, and I'm going to get a little bit of the vegetation mix in from episode 1. I'm going to use some hickories in fact here, and again I didn't want it too jarring in terms of a change in vegetation from one side of the road to the next. So yeah, just in case you wonder why I'm using them. But listen, I'll leave that running, and then we'll catch up with you with a build review in about 1 minute. Now it's time to have a look at what we've ended up with, and I reckon we'll start with a bird's eye view here and see how it fits in its surroundings. Well, I think it certainly stands out with the orange, and I think it looks pretty spectacular. I don't know about you guys, I think it fits in there really well. I think as we expand out on this area, it's really going to be an eye-catching part of the city. I was pretty happy to be able to come back here right the way back to episode 1 and really, start extending out this side of the city. It's not going to be my focus over the next coming weeks. I am really going to go back to that downtown, and I've got plans to really go to town on that and get that whole south of the city sorted out. But when we come back, this is probably going to kick off where we're going to start things again. I'd like to give you guys just a few minutes to kind of take in the flow of the traffic. And as you can see, roundabouts working as intended. They are going anti-clockwise, as you would expect on right-hand traffic. They are feeding people into the contraflow system, which is basically running clockwise direction, and that is shifting traffic over to the left-hand side rather than the right. Sounds convoluted and complicated, but really it's pretty straightforward. So what about those comments at the start of the video? Those are real quotes, they are from some random Facebook page that I found, and I think some of them perhaps a little bit hysterical, but in fairness, a lot of them were in favour of the development as well. There was certainly some interesting views on roundabouts, that's for sure. I don't know what it is with certain Americans and roundabouts. They're not difficult. I don't know what the big deal is. Help me out, please, somebody in the comments. But regardless of what you think of them in real life, this is going to work pretty good in the game, I reckon. It will work reasonably well. The weak point is right there where you see the roundabout connecting to the contraflow system. So you've got traffic basically meeting head on. So what I might suggest, if that starts to get sort of backed up, is maybe just stick a traffic light on it. So very much like a normal DDI here, it should prevent things from backing up too bad. If it gets busier than that, then I'll just rip it up and stick a system interchange instead. That's going to be an alternative, because DDIs work in the game really, really good. Proven that tons of times, and this should be no different. I really like this view actually. It does really emphasise that drop in height from the higher level to the lower. I think given the work that we've done on the key walls, we've got those surfaces and the curves looking really smooth. Then a little bit of decal, and although we have shadows there, it kind of emphasises that drop and that change, because the colours with the surfaces and the key walls are quite similar. Got a bit of a physical divide going on in this particular neighbourhood with those big electricity pylons, but again, using a wee bit of time and care, we can get that looking sort of reasonably realistic, I guess. If you want to take a closer look at the interchange, it's on the game save, available for Patreon supporters. That's it from me, guys. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.